Okay, I want you to imagine a cinematic experience entirely confined to your everyday computer screen. No sweeping landscapes, no traditional camera crews, just the blinking of a cursor, a buffering video call, and the raw suspense of a delayed text message. So what actually happens to our whole understanding of cinema when the movie camera is literally just a webcam?
Welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled to guide you through a really fascinating conflict happening right now in modern filmmaking. It's an all-out battle between big-budget Hollywood spectacle and indie ScreenLife purity. We are going to look closely at two very different films to understand exactly how they use, and sometimes totally abuse, the unique language of the digital screen.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the ScreenLife revolution, breaking the meta-suture, the archive illusion, the surveillance capitalism paradox, and finally wrap up with the purist approach. Let's get right into it.
All right, part one, the ScreenLife revolution and how it's completely redefining the cinematic apparatus. To really get what's at stake here, we have to look at how ScreenLife changes our actual relationship with the screen itself. You know, in traditional film theory, there's this concept called suture. It's that invisible camera work and seamless editing that makes you totally forget you're watching a movie. But ScreenLife, it replaces that with what we call meta-suture. Instead of fancy editing making the camera disappear, it's our own everyday familiarity with digital actions that tricks us into believing the interface is real. This magic is built entirely on everyday imperfections. We're talking about erratic cursor movements, agonizing typing delays, those little pinging notification sounds, buffering icons, a messy cluster of application windows. ScreenLife pioneer Timur Bekmambetov actually insists the entire story should unfold on a single digital screen, in real time. It's those lagging connections and accidental clicks that replace traditional editing to build suspense and, honestly, total immersion. And this brings us to a massive theoretical shift. Classic film theorist Christian Metz used to argue that traditional cinema makes the viewer an invisible observer, basically a detached voyeur sitting in the dark. But ScreenLife creates a reciprocal gaze. Think about it. Because characters are constantly communicating through webcams and phones, they're looking directly into the lens, which means they are looking directly at you. That completely collapses the distance between you and the screen. You're no longer a passive observer. You are pulled right in as an active participant.
Moving on to part two. Breaking the meta-suture, or what I like to call Mercy's Hollywood contradiction.
Let's look at the 2026 film Mercy. It is the absolute perfect example of setting up all these digital rules only to spectacularly tear them right back down. Mercy starts off with digital interfaces, sure, but then it frequently just abandons them. Suddenly you're getting IMAX-style action cinematography, sweeping aerial drone shots of Los Angeles, and these crazy 3D spatial reconstructions. By injecting all this external Hollywood spectacle into a desktop format, the film completely violates Bekmambetov's #1 rule, that the story has to stay confined to a single screen.
And here is the crucial takeaway. By giving us those massive blockbuster shots, Mercy absolutely destroys the meta-suture we just talked about. In pure ScreenLife, all the suspense comes from restricted knowledge. You literally only know what the protagonist sees on their laptop. But the second you throw in a sweeping drone shot, you get information outside the digital interface. The whole illusion of a real-time digital experience shatters, and we are pushed right back into being detached external observers.
Okay, part three, the archive illusion, immediacy versus hypermediacy.
So how exactly does Mercy try and ultimately fail to create realistic digital evidence? Let's bring in Jamie Barron's concept of the archive effect. Basically, when a movie uses footage that looks like discovered CCTV or surveillance video, it's trying to make the story feel like a genuine documentary. The goal is to make us, the audience, perceive these digital files as authentic historical records that existed way before the movie was even made.
But here's the catch. Mercy had a massive reported production budget of $60 million. And ironically, spending that kind of blockbuster money to make a movie look like a cheap, gritty webcam actually works entirely against it. The interface in this film is just way too polished. It's visually symmetrical, the lighting is gorgeous, and it's backed by this sweeping orchestral music. It doesn't look anything like a cluttered, glitchy, everyday desktop. It just looks like a highly choreographed cinematic spectacle.
This tension right here perfectly captures a media theory known as remediation. Theorists contrast immediacy, which is when the medium basically disappears so you feel like you're actually there, with hypermediacy. Hypermediacy is when all the elaborate digital bells and whistles constantly remind you, hey, you're watching a screen. Mercy's hyper-polished screens, its flawless transitions, its crystal-clear surveillance feeds, they draw so much attention to themselves that they strip the archive footage of any real authenticity. We know for sure we're watching a constructed Hollywood product, not genuine digital evidence.
Which leads us into part 4, the surveillance capitalism paradox, exploring the digital panopticon.
Shifting gears from visual style to ideological subtext, we run into some massive ethical contradictions in March's vision of a 2029 dystopian LA. On the surface, the film seems to critique surveillance, but in practice, it functions almost like commercial product placement for it. We see Amazon Ring doorbell cameras framed as the ultimate preservers of public safety, an AI judge named Maddox who supposedly validates absolute truth, and municipal cloud archives that totally normalize mass consumer data collection. You know, philosopher Michel Foucault famously talked about the panopticon, this system where people police themselves simply because they might be watched. But in the film, these massive corporate surveillance tools aren't a nightmare. They're framed as indispensable, helpful tools.
And that gives us this glaring core paradox. The film supposedly sets out to critique AI-driven authoritarian justice, right? But to survive, our protagonist actually has to use the exact same corporate surveillance network that threatened him, just to prove his innocence. The film never abolishes the surveillance infrastructure. It basically just suggests, hey, maybe we just need to manage it better. It completely normalizes what scholar Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism, portraying constant corporate data collection as an unavoidable and even helpful fact of life. Honestly, it's a pretty chilling reflection of how casually we accept surveillance in our own real lives.
All right, finally part 5, the purist approach, looking at CTRL and diegetic cinematography.
So, if Mercy breaks all the rules and muddles its own message, what does that actually look like when a film gets this right? Well, the perfect antidote is Vikramaditya Motwan's 2024 Indian film, CTRL. This quote right here is basically the ultimate ScreenLife dogma. The defining feature of ScreenLife is not merely the presence of digital screens, but the commitment to their limitations. And that, my friends, is exactly how CTRL finds its brilliant success. It strictly plays by the rules of the format.
Let's walk through how CTRL achieves perfect diegetic cinematography. And that just means every single visual has a believable, in-world technological source. Step 1, the cameras only exist inside the story. We're talking webcams, smartphones, CCTV. Step 2, there are no traditional close-ups whatsoever. Instead, the screen layouts themselves frame the action. And step 3, the rhythm of the movie isn't created by smoothly moving a camera on a dolly. It's generated entirely by the protagonist, Nella, frantically scrolling, opening tabs, and navigating her messy digital ecosystem. The film quite literally never leaves the desktop.
And because CTRL commits to staying entirely within that interface, it manages to successfully critique the tech world. It dives deep into our AI dependency, investigates data commodification, and seamlessly integrates India's massive creator economy. Instead of giving us that detached Hollywood spectacle, it forces participatory spectatorship. By making us live inside the interface, navigating the exact same chats and deleted files right alongside Nella, we actually become active investigators of the very algorithmic control the film is critiquing. It's an absolute game changer.
Which leaves us with one final, absolutely crucial question to think about. When that reciprocal gaze is activated and you are sitting there, staring right into the blinking eye of a webcam, are you just watching the screen? Or is the screen watching you? When we really understand the mechanics of ScreenLife, we're kind of forced to reconsider our own everyday complicity in this real-world digital panopticon. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Next time you crack open your laptop, maybe take a closer look at what's looking back.